are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, your host for Locked On Seahawks. Joining me as always, my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. It's a special edition matchup Saturday. We didn't get to do our Wednesday show as planned. Had a little bit of a Rona scare here in the household. Luckily, nobody tested positive. So kind of got out of the woods a little bit there, but made Wednesday a little bit interesting. Weren't able to get a show in, but nonetheless, we weren't going to miss our weekly matchup show, our favorite show of the week here on Locked On Seahawks. So we'll be diving into all the key matchups to watch when the Seahawks close out their 2021 season on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Now for your lead story here on Locked On Seahawks. Just a few days ago, Bobby Wagner spoke to the media, his weekly Wednesday press conference, and suggested that there was a chance that he would be able to play in this football game after exiting with a knee sprain against the Lions on Sunday. But as you and I both suspected when he made those comments, the chances of him being able to play were pretty slim. And now we do know, Rob, that number 54 will not be playing in the season finale, which, of course, is going to drum up the speculation about his future that we've already seen get a little bit heated here over the past couple of weeks. Did we see him play his last game in the Seahawks uniform against the Lions? That's going to be the speculation now for the next several weeks as we transition into the offseason.
Yeah, that is going to be the speculation, and I look forward to having that conversation once we do get into the offseason. But of course, here we are on a day before the Seahawks are going to be facing the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm excited about the opportunity that Cody Barton has presented, to him now, because of course, when he came in against the Detroit Lions, it was after that very first snap when the Seahawks were on the defensive side of the football. Bobby Wagner did the, pretty awkward splits there, got injured, and Cody Barton then suddenly was pushed to the forefront and had to play a lot of football, and he played really well. Now, obviously, it was against the Detroit Lions, not a team that's very talented. 2 wins on the season, none of them on the road. The Seahawks going, they're themselves on the road here against the Arizona Cardinals in Glendale, and so it's going to be interesting to see how well Cody Barton responds to the challenge that is against the Arizona Cardinals team that, as you know, Corbin, is going to be fighting for an opportunity to win the NFC West division. So I again look forward to the opportunity to kind of talk about Bobby Wagner and his perhaps legacy with the Seahawks, perhaps his future in 2022 with the Seahawks. But I'm excited for the opportunity to evaluate what Cody Barton might be able to do in his first start in the NFL at the middle linebacker position, with a lot on the line in a lot of ways against the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I think this is a huge game. We talked about it earlier in the week that this is an opportunity for Cody Barton playing the position he says he's most comfortable at Mike linebacker. If he goes out and plays well against a very good Arizona Cardinals team, he's coming off a game that I thought he was one of the 3 or 4 most impressive players for the Seahawks on Sunday against the Lions. He was all over the place, making plays in the run game, had a pass breakup in coverage, had a couple really nice blitzes where he got after the quarterback. He was doing a little bit of everything. If he can replicate that against the Arizona Cardinals, a superior team from a talent perspective, I do think that creates a discussion for the Seahawks going into this offseason because of Bobby Wagner's $20+ million cap hit next year. Now, again, you and I both want to wait until we truly have to discuss those topics for offseason topics after the year gets over with, but it does create a great opportunity for Cody Barton in this game. Couple other players that will be out for the Seahawks. John Reed got a concussion last week. He won't be playing this game, so a little less depth at cornerback going into this season finale. And the Seahawks will also be without Brandon Shell, and he's been out since week 13. We've seen Jake Curhan start the last 4 games. He's going to get his 5th consecutive start at right tackle. He's done a really nice job. So another player that has an example to continue bolstering his resume going into the 2022 season, maybe just maybe an opportunity against a couple really good pass rushers. If Jake Curhan plays well, this might be the game that clinches him as a potential favorite to be your starter at right tackle next August.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. I mean, I think that while I'm excited to kind of talk about the off season and what might happen with the Seahawks, as well as what is obviously happening here against the Arizona Cardinals, I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of just look back for a moment and recognize what a diamond in the rough the Seahawks absolutely unearthed with Jake Curhan. The Seahawks during the John Schneider, Pete Carroll era have done a great job. It's been well documented of finding these undrafted free agents, these late round picks. Chris Carson, of course, being a 7th round pick, being a prime example of that. And there's been so many undrafted free agents during John and Pete's tenure too, that they deserve a lot of credit for doing so. But there's been a lot of people out there who have kind of, knocked Seattle's ability or perhaps inability to find offensive linemen. And yet Jake Curhan has proved himself to be an NFL starting caliber offensive tackle basically from the jump once he got his opportunity. Now, at the same time, he is going to be going against a very talented Arizona Cardinals pass rush. He's most likely going to be going mostly against Marcus Golden, perhaps a few times against Chandler Jones. That is a significant 1-2 punch for the Arizona Cardinals, especially considering that this game, again, is going to be at Arizona. And so I am really intrigued by the possibility of what Jake Curran is going to be able to show there. And then again, with all due respect to John Reed at the cornerback position, the fact that Seattle is going to have likely Sidney Jones as well as DJ Reed going up against this Arizona Cardinals offense. The big wide receivers that they have on the field, Kyler Murray, of course, number 1 overall pick, and in some people's estimation, an MVP candidate. To me, this is going to be a really fascinating matchup from an evaluative standpoint. We all know that the Seahawks are out of the playoffs, but again, from an evaluative standpoint, this is about as good as it's going to get in Week 17.
Yeah, a couple other injuries of note for the Seahawks. 3 players that are listed as questionable going into this game. Carlos Dunlap sprained his ankle in last weekend's game. He did practice today, so there's an opportunity for him to potentially play in this football game to close out the season. Gabe Jackson, he's been in and out of practice with a knee issue for the last several weeks. Pete Carroll said on Friday that it's a little worse than it has been. So we might see Phil Haynes again, this time playing right guard, another player that has a lot on the line, getting a second consecutive start going into the offseason. And then the other player, Will Dissly, dealing with a bruised heel. I don't know. The update from Pete Carroll did not sound overly encouraging about whether he was going to be able to play in this game. It just sounds like it's something that's pretty uncomfortable. So that would mean you're probably going to see Tyler Mabry get called up to go with Colby Parkinson and Gerald Everett, but we'll see. All 3 of those players listed as questionable. Dissly and Jackson, game time decisions. Probably can say the same thing with Carlos Dunlap as well, but a number of young players that would have an opportunity to step up and fill in for those players if they are not able to play in the season finale in Arizona. We've already kind of had a nice segue here, but we're going to get into the Seahawks offensively going against the Cardinals on defense in this NFC West matchup for our Matchup Saturday podcast. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. And Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good, you'll always want to eat it. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets boring this time of year. By week 3, you might be thinking this is just not worth it. Where's the chocolate? But Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate and contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Here's an idea going into the new year. Go to all your secret treat stashes at home, in the pantry, at the office, in the car, wherever, and throw out all the sugary, calorie-filled treats and replace them with Built Bars. So when you're craving a snack or treat, you can reach for something that's healthy and tastes incredible. So many great flavors, whether it's raspberry cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many others. Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So check out Built.com often, see what's new. Go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, it's matchup Saturday. It feels like this has happened to us a lot this year, Rob, where we've had to kind of throw audibles out there with our matchup episodes, in particular with all the games being moved to Monday nights and having a Tuesday night game. And now this time, the game doesn't get moved, but life happens for both of us. So it's matchup Saturday. Going to look at the Seahawks now on offense, coming off a big game with 51 points against the Detroit Lions, now facing a familiar foe in the Arizona Cardinals. And I think we have to start, you kind of already hit on this a little bit in our opening segment, but anytime these two teams get together, it's all about pass protection for the Seahawks. Can you give Russell Wilson time to throw the football? And a lot of that's going to fall on the two tackles, Dwayne Brown and Jake Curhan, going up against Chandler Jones, who I think has 75 sacks in his career against the Seattle Seahawks. And then the other side, you've got Marcus Golden, who's had a fantastic year and actually leads the Cardinals in sacks this season. So you've got two different types of pass rushers that are very effective getting after the quarterback and have had great seasons. Now the two tackles got to find a way to limit the amount of times that they get to Russell Wilson back in the pocket.
Yeah, there's no question about that. That's where the game starts. I mean, you can say what you want about the quarterback, but you have to protect him a little bit. And the Arizona Cardinals are one of the most unique teams in the league because they have guys on both sides who can get after the passer, and that's one of the reasons why they are competing for the NFC West divisional crown. And just a couple of weeks ago, I mean, they were the favorite to be the number one seed in the NFC. So to me, this is a really fascinating matchup. You have the Seahawks who have, an undrafted free agent, as we talked about, and Jake Curhan at the right tackle position. Brandon Shell is not going to be available in this game. And so how is he going to face off against Marcus Golden? Really good football player, physical, quick, and technically refined. And then you go against Chandler Jones, and my goodness, he is one among the best edge rushers in the game at this point. Really long arms, knows how to use them, has the quick twitch to be able to get that initial, burst off the ball and be able to get tackles sliding. We have seen Dwayne Brown struggle at times this year, but he's steadied his game here in the last couple of months. And so really creating kind of a conversation for Seattle internally about whether or not they're going to want to be able to try to, make that offer to Dwayne Brown, be able to try to convince him to come back for yet another year in the NFL. Because I think he's played pretty good football. And I look out there from an NFL draft perspective, and is there really anybody available in the 22 draft class that is going to be able to compete with Dwayne Brown or Stone Forsythe to be able to be Seattle's left tackle of the future? I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. So to me, you're obviously looking at your younger players like a Jake Curhan and evaluating them. You're also looking at one of the older players on Seattle's roster, at least right now, in Dwayne Brown, and evaluating him very much as well. So I think that is, again, one of the matchups that we have to start off with, especially because the Arizona Cardinals are playing at home, and we all know what a home field advantage the crowd can be.
Yeah, I look at these two matchups on the outside. Dwayne Brown's got plenty of experience going up against Chandler Jones. And even though Jones has got a lot of sacks against the Seahawks over the years, Dwayne Brown's held up fairly well against him. Those two know each other, established veterans. They know what each person's strength and weakness is. And so I think that's going to be a lot of fun. On the other side, as good as Jake Curhan has been, I do think when you look at his game, what really stands out to me is an area that maybe is the most concerning. He is not a great athlete, and he has had trouble with twitchy edge rushers in the starts that he's had so far this year. And I don't know if that's something that's necessarily ever going to get a lot better from an athleticism standpoint. He's not going to get that much more athletic in the NFL. He's an established player coming into the league. Guys don't just randomly become great athletes at the offensive line once they get into the NFL. That doesn't happen. He's going to have to make up for it with technique and understanding how to cut off moves and be able to cut off speed rushes at the top. He's going to have to find technical ways to do it. And so I think this is going to be a difficult matchup for him. Chandler Jones is a problem for any tackle in the league. So if he's going against Curhan, that's going to be a problem too. But Marcus Golden, especially with his quickness off the edge, that to me might be the most concerning matchup going into this game with the Seahawks playing an undrafted rookie at right tackle. Hopefully he's able to come out and have another solid game. I feel like his pass pro's gotten better each week. He did give up a sack last week to Detroit, but overall played pretty well in pass pro and was mauling in the run game. And that's something he's really given this team. Maybe that's an advantage for him against those edge rushers. Dwayne Brown's blocking well in the run game. Jay Curhan's been feasting in the run game. So maybe that's how you slow these two guys down, run at them. That'll be something I'm curious to see what the Seahawks do, especially with the success they've had running the ball. Speaking of running the football, let's stay on the offensive line because I really think this game is all about the trenches. Not just defending or not just protecting Russell Wilson from the edge rushers, but also Arizona's a little light right now at defensive tackle. They might not have one of their interior players, Zach Allen. He's questionable to play. They do have Lecky Fotu, who was a favorite of yours going into the draft process a few years ago. Really big dude, hard to run the football against. But they are light in terms of depth at that position. Seahawks are going to get Damian Lewis back, even if Gabe Jackson can't play. Phil Haynes showed last week that he can get the job done. Excited to see him play again. And Ethan Posick is playing pretty good football the last few games. With Rashad Penny behind him, this looks like this might be an area the Seahawks can capitalize on. And again, you want to take those two edge rushers out of the game, get that run game going, particularly between the tackles, and that's going to slow those guys down by default.
And that's a perfect segue because that's exactly how I feel about this game. Again, we all know the Seahawks are not in the playoff chase. But at the same time, from an evaluative standpoint, I mean, let me put that hat on here for a moment. From an NFL draft perspective, how do the Seahawks build themselves back up? This is a pretty intriguing football game, Corbin, because as you just mentioned, the Arizona Cardinals have some injuries of their own. They're starting nose guard, Jordan Phillips, a guy who's 6'6", 330 pounds, normally would line up straight up on the center, Ethan Posick. He's likely going to be out of this football game. And so the Arizona Cardinals are going to have to kind of figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to move Lecky Fotu inside? Is Zach Allen going to be able to play? A guy who's 6'5", 280 pounds, really powerful guy on the outside. Is he going to move inside? What are they going to do at that point? Seattle has to make a decision themselves about the guard position with Gabe Jackson, the veteran. You know what he is. Maybe Seattle opts to use Gabe Jackson, or excuse me, Phil Haynes over at that right guard position. Maybe they move Damian Lewis back over to the right guard position, considering how many starts that he had as a rookie, and Phil Haynes having, virtually no starts, at the right guard position and only a couple at the left guard position. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Seattle does there. So I am really interested to see what Seattle does along the offensive line, what they do with the running back position. Rashad Penny is clearly the guy, but how effective is he? And so, again, I think that the interior offensive line is going to be fascinating. I think the running back is going to be fascinating, considering what Arizona has at the linebacker position. If Seattle is unable to establish any type of consistent running game, that's just going to open it back up to what we talked about in our first matchup at the outside edge rusher position against Seattle's offensive tackles. So again, the entire front, the Seattle's offensive line versus Arizona's defensive line, is a really, really fascinating, evaluation here, because this is a game where Seattle has a number of players that they have to make determinations about what they are looking to do in the 2022 season. And so to me, again, everybody's going to focus in on the running back, Rashad Penny. And I understand that. You have to evaluate him as well. But it's more than that. It is the interior of the offensive line. It's the exterior of the offensive line. That's why, again, this Week 18 matchup, I said Week 17 earlier, I apologize. It's obviously Seattle's 17th game. This truly is a fascinating evaluation for so many different reasons.
I just think that this game, when you look at the talent the Cardinals have at linebacker, players like Isaiah Simmons are kind of light at the linebacker position. If you can bully the interior defenders up front and you can get your guards, particularly if Phil Haynes plays in this game, one thing I loved about his film last week was climbing up to linebackers. 2 or 3 times made outstanding blocks on athletic linebackers the Detroit Lions have. If you can get those guards and even your center climbing to the second level, you control the line of scrimmage against the defensive tackles, and you're getting some of those blocks on linebackers with Rashad Penny's speed that we have seen on display the last month, and even DJ Dallas and Travis Homer at running back. They've got the guys back there to be able to run the football on this team. Now, if you aren't controlling the line of scrimmage and those linebackers are free to make plays, it could be a really difficult game for you to move the ball at all on the ground. If that happens, you become one-dimensional. That does not bode well at all for the Seahawks. So I think this is another really important matchup. Now, let's get to the skill positions real quick. Rather than just talking about Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, because we do that every week, I actually like the quarterback versus safety matchup here. The Cardinals have two safeties with Washington State ties. You've got Budda Baker. You've also got Jalen Thompson. Russell Wilson going against one of the best safety tandems in the league. That's really been a big reason why the Cardinals have given up the third fewest passing plays of 20 or more yards. They just don't give up many explosives. A big part of that are those two safeties the Cardinals have that they move all over the formation. They can play in the box. They can play deep, single high, two high, you name it. Two very versatile safeties that the Cardinals have. Russell Wilson's got to know where both those players are at, and you've got to take your shots carefully against this secondary that will create turnovers. And like I said, they've limited big plays. There will be a few chances in the game to make those, but you're going to have to hit on those opportunities. And if you roll the dice too many times, these two safeties will make you pay. Budda Baker's done it to Wilson a few times already. Thompson has the talent, ball skills-wise, to do that as well. So you're going to have to be less of a risk taker and really be efficient with those chances when you do work the football downfield in the passing game.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Corbin. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's not just the former Husky Budda Baker, the former Cougar Jalen Thompson. It's another former Husky and Byron Murphy at the cornerback position as well. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals might as well just be drafting nothing but products out of the state of Washington when it comes to the secondary. And so, yeah, I think that this is again another fascinating matchup. I really am excited, perhaps unnaturally so at this point, you're considering the Seattle is not going to be in the playoff chase, to be watching this game, because again, there's so many evaluation opportunities here. And the biggest one, of course, is Russell Wilson. I want to see Russell Wilson be able to duplicate the efficiency, the precision, the decision-making, the getting the ball out of his damn hand as quickly as he possibly did, the way he did against the Detroit Lions last week, against a team as talented as the Arizona Cardinals, with the pass rush they have, the cornerbacks, playmakers that they have, the safeties that they have, and with everything on the line. The Arizona Cardinals, if they win, are in contention to be the NFC West champions. You don't think that they want that? And so to me, and of course the Seahawks, from the Seahawks perspective, if they win this game, are still going to be, not a team that's not in the playoffs. Again, we've established that. But they will also be finishing 500 in the best division in the NFL, the NFC West. And so that's huge for them. And so say what you will about Russell Wilson, all the big, beautiful throws that he made. I would make the argument that he was his most impressive performance of the year was last week against the Detroit Lions, in that he was efficient. He got the ball out of his hands very quickly. It was an impressive performance. It was exactly what the Seahawks fans were hoping for when Shane Waldron came in. They wanted to see quick decisions from Russell Wilson. Well, you did it against the 2-and-whatever Detroit Lions. Let's see if you can do it against an actually quality defense that is playing with everything on the line. So to me, this is absolutely a critical matchup here, and one that I'm really excited to see. Is it going to just be throwing the ball to DK Metcalf and hoping that he can get 3 more touchdowns against you? Is it going to be spreading the football out? Because especially, as you mentioned previously, that Will Dissly may not be available in this game. So are they going to have Cody Parkinson, or perhaps bring somebody else up from the practice squad? I'm really curious to see, because again, one last point we talked about before with the running game. The Arizona Cardinals have allowed just 8 rushing touchdowns all year long. There are 0 teams in the NFL who have allowed less than that. So if it is in fact going to be Rashad Penny or whoever in the running game that's going to be able to take some of that pressure off of Russell Wilson, that would be a story in itself. This most likely is going to be on Russell Wilson to be able to make some plays. And I'm very curious, considering all the offseason speculation that you and I and everybody else are going to have about number 3. Can you do it? It's going to be a fascinating matchup in so many different ways.
Yeah, big game coming up for everybody on the Seahawks offense. You want to finish the year on a strong note, especially because the offense has been playing better for the most part the last 4 or 5 games. Been able to get things going a little too late, but they have been playing better. We're going to talk Seahawks defense against the Cardinals offense here coming up in our third quarter. Seahawks fans, you want to check out this incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. It's called Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore with the Get Upside app. Just download the app for free and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account, so you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Download the free Get Upside app today and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Just use the code TOUCHDOWN on the Get Upside app. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast matchup Saturday edition. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. With me, as always, Rob Rang. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day, 5 days a week. Continuing our matchups, going to flip over to the Seahawks on defense going up against the Cardinals on offense. And last time these two teams met, we were previewing Colt McCoy. And honestly, with the Seahawks track record against Colt McCoy, maybe we should be thanking our lucky stars that we're looking at Kyler Murray for this game. Kyler Murray back healthy, has played the last 5 games, had one of his better starts since coming back from an injury last week in their win against the Dallas Cowboys. But this is a Cardinals offense that's missing some key pieces, particularly on the outside. So let's start there with our matchups, Rob. The Seahawks are going to have both their starting corners back. Sidney Jones was activated from the COVID-19 list earlier this week, so they're going to have him back. DJ Reed returned last week, had 2 interceptions against the Detroit Lions. So you're going to have both of those players. The Cardinals will be without DeAndre Hopkins, and they're also going to be without rookie Rondale Moore, who gave the Seahawks fits in that first matchup. So they're missing 2 of their best receivers. That seems like an advantage for the Seahawks, but you do have 2 smaller corners, particularly DJ Reed with his 5'9" frame. And you've got a couple really big receivers in A.J. Green and Antoine Wesley, who are going to be getting a lot of snaps for the Cardinals. And in the slot, Christian Kirk, he's had some issues with drops during his career, but he always seems to play at his best against the Seahawks. And that could be a matchup problem against Ugo Amadi, who, while he did have an interception last week, has had some trouble in man coverage working out of the slot this year. Christian Kirk, one of the better route runners that you're going to find in the slot in the NFL. This might be the deciding factor when we're looking at Seahawks defense against the Cardinals on offense, because they are going to be looking to sling the rock all over the yard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury as head coach, Kyler Murray at the quarterback, they're absolutely going to be throwing the football around. You know that. And, as you mentioned, Seattle's going to have their, starting cornerback duo of DJ Reed and Sidney Jones out there. And that's a couple of guys who are, 5'10" and a half and shorter. Again, going against Arizona's starting wide receiver duo and A.J. Green, 6'5", and Antoine Wesley, 6'4". I mean, it doesn't take a math graduate to understand the math there. I mean, you're talking about guys who have a 6-inch advantage over both the Seattle's cornerbacks. You have Kyler Murray, who has great ball placement throwing the football. I mean, every Seahawk fan, unfortunately, has probably watched the highlights at one time or another of the incredible throw that Kyler Murray made, to DeAndre Hopkins a year ago up in the end zone, where he was able to kind of sky and make that incredible touchdown that turned a loss into a win. And so to me, that might just be the matchup to really be concerned about here is, can the Arizona Cardinals be able to have their quote unquote backup wide receivers? I say quote unquote because AJ Green might just be a future Hall of Famer. I mean, but still, you are talking about their backup wide receivers who might still be able to beat Seattle's starting cornerbacks. And so I'm really interested to see what Seattle is able to do with that cornerback position, especially considering the long-term future of Seattle's cornerbacks, especially with Sidney Jones, who, of course, is a pending free agent. So to me, again, this is a huge matchup. And then I love the fact that you mentioned, Christian Kirk. I mean, this is a guy who has struggled with catches at times, but over the last couple of games, I mean, he has kind of emerged as Kyler Murray's number one target. So whether he be in the slot, whether he be pushed outside, it's going to be interesting to see who Seattle tries to match up against him and if they are able to slow down Christian Kirk, because receivers who have the make you miss that Christian Kirk possesses has been kind of a bugaboo for the Seahawks in the past, especially when there has been some safety concerns with Ryan Neal going to be ruled out of this game. And so you have to have some quality open field tackling on the back end. Considering what Seattle just struggled with against the Detroit Lions, and I don't even want to say the name Amon-Ra St. Brown, but considering how well that he did against Seattle just last week, when you have a guy like Cedric or Christian Kirk who has a similar skill set, that's a pretty formidable matchup, even though he doesn't have the big name that AJ Green, Rondale Moore, and certainly DeAndre Hopkins have.
Yeah, I think that is the matchup that's going to have the biggest bearing on this game. But I think we could look at close second, staying in the passing game, because Zach Ertz absolutely torched the Seahawks the first time these two teams played. That was one of his first games in Arizona after the Cardinals acquired him from the Eagles. And we know Zach Ertz is one of the better pass-catching tight ends in the NFL. Kyler Murray has really enjoyed having him. Colt McCoy, that was his security blanket in that game. He was going to Ertz early and often, and Jamal Adams was playing in that game. They don't have Jamal Adams anymore. He's done for the season. Ryan Neal, you mentioned he's on the COVID-19 list. They're probably going to be playing either Nigel Warrior or Josh Jones at the strong safety position. Now, Josh Jones has started more than 20 games in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he has a lot of experience. He's a big-bodied safety that might match up well from a physical standpoint against Zach Ertz. Nigel Warrior's not a small guy either, not as big as Josh Jones. But these are two guys that you can evaluate, but certainly not the ideal situation, especially when you consider Zach Ertz was killing you when you had your all-pro safety Jamal Adams out there and Ryan Neal was available in that game. Neither one of them out there now. And maybe even Ugo Amadi playing some at strong safety at his diminutive size would be a major problem against Zach Ertz. This is another matchup that really screams, well, maybe the Seahawks can hold their own against the outside receivers without Hopkins and Rondale Moore. Zach Ertz going against third and fourth string strong safeties, that screams huge advantage for the Arizona Cardinals in this passing game.
It really does. And that's why our listeners listen to you and I talk about this, about these matchups, Corbin, on a Saturday of all things, because this is the matchup that should scare you. This is the matchup that if you're one of those fantasy football owners out there and you have a guy like Zach Ertz on your team, you may want to consider, and we all know that Seattle has struggled against tight ends in the past, but now that they have perhaps Josh Jones, perhaps Nigel Warrior, good football players, both of them, both straight line guys, not guys who have that change of direction type of ability. Zach Ertz is a really good route runner at the tight end position. He has those sticky hands. You know, he caught 8 passes for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns last time. I don't know that he is not going to have a very similar performance, perhaps even a bigger performance against Seattle this time. I talked about the possibility of Seattle starting Josh Jones previously because I want to evaluate this guy. He's 6'2", he's 220 pounds. He ran a 4.4. I mean, there's a reason why he was selected in the second round by the Green Bay Packers a couple of years ago. There's a reason why Seattle was excited to get him. At the same time, again, I have my questions about whether he can change directions quickly enough to be really effective against a guy like Zach Ertz if Kyler Murray is going to focus on him the way that Colt McCoy did. So again, this is one of those kind of evaluative opportunities. Seattle has some big decisions that they have to make at that safety position. Most at the free safety position, understandably, with Quandre Diggs entering free agency potentially in this offseason if Seattle doesn't make a move previous to Quandre Diggs being, getting that opportunity. But at the same time, again, Ryan Neal was a good football player. And now that you don't have him available, you have a guy in Josh Jones and Nigel Warrior, who both of them were guys that every team in the league had an opportunity to bring in. Seattle did so. So talk about an opportunity to evaluate these players. You have to see what they can do against the best of the best. Zach Ertz, a former Pro Bowler. This is going to be an interesting matchup for Seattle, one that they have to win. Otherwise, they could walk out of Arizona with yet another loss.
The way that I'm looking at this, the matchups on the outside, yes, Arizona's got talent still, even without Hopkins and Rondale Moore, but it feels like that should be a matchup with how well the Seahawks outside corners have played that maybe should be an advantage for them. The tight end, Zach Ertz, going against your third and fourth string strong safeties, that screams heavy advantage for Arizona. The last matchup here, I really feel like is a toss-up because even without Bobby Wagner, we saw how well Cody Barton played last weekend, and I think his athleticism going against an air raid offense actually bodes well for Seattle. I think that his skill set, I think he can handle this particular game pretty well because he moves well and he's a former safety that has pretty good coverage traits. And of course, Jordan Brooks, he's played against Kyler Murray going back to college in the Big 12. So he's very familiar with Kyler Murray. He's had some good games against the Cardinals already in his first couple years in the league. Going up against James Conner, they're not going to have Chase Edmonds, their other running back. He's been dealing with injuries most of the season, not going to be playing this game. But Eno Benjamin's the other one that I would keep a very close eye on, former Arizona State running back that's made some plays when he's had opportunities to play. For the Cardinals, James Conner has scored like 80 touchdowns this year on the ground, second in the NFL right now in rushing touchdowns. So you got to deal with him, more of a battering ram style running back. And then Eno Benjamin, even though he's a smaller guy, he runs with physicality too. And he's a very savvy receiver on top of that. Both these guys, Conner can catch the ball fairly well and has been involved in their screen game. So this really feels like a toss-up. You like Seattle's linebackers even without Bobby Wagner, but Arizona's got a couple of real nice weapons. Even if they don't have Chase Edmonds, you've got some physical runners that you can change the pace and not be one-dimensional with if you're the Arizona Cardinals. And so this might ultimately be the matchup that really decides things, even though the other two we've already talked about probably are the more featured matchups. The run game for the Cardinals has been better than expected, and the Seahawks don't have Bobby Wagner. Arizona might want to try to take advantage of that, while Cody Barton wants to prove that he can play in this league as a starting Mike linebacker. I think this is going to be a lot of fun watching this particular matchup.
I do too. I really think that this will be a fun matchup because, again, from a Seattle evaluation standpoint, you want to see what Cody Barton can do. This is going to be his first start at the middle linebacker position. And again, from an evaluation standpoint, I would love to see James Conner on the field because I think he's a really good football player. He is a downhill guy who will put average middle linebackers on their backside. He will run right through them. So, Cody Barton, do you have the sand in your pants to actually, you have the physicality, the want to, the toughness to be able to play that position? Let's see it. I want to evaluate that now before Seattle has to make a huge decision on Bobby Wagner moving forward. And if that is not the case, if it is in fact going to be Eno Benjamin, good football player, has some burst, has some speed, has some hands, is going to be Jonathan Ward, the undrafted free agent out of Central Michigan, who has some hands, 5'11", 195-pounder, has some burst. That's going to be an interesting matchup as well for Seattle. But at the same time, again, I really am trying to evaluate Cody Barton, what he is able to do in this football game. And the head coach, Cliff Kingsbury. You mentioned before, Corbin, that they use Zach Ertz early in his time in Arizona and basically just kind of flexed a little bit against Seattle. You think you got a playmaker in Jamal Adams? We're going to show you what our guy can do against your guy. I think that the Arizona Cardinals, considering they know that they are already in the playoffs, they're not going to want to show too much of what they're going to do in the playoffs. They're going to want to kind of be able to just rest in their laurels and be able to, not show too much and see what they can do. So I think that they're going to test Cody Barton a little bit in this football game. I think that even if, that James Conner is not available to them, they're still going to want to try to run downhill against the Seahawks if Seattle has any chance in this game. And I think that they absolutely do have a chance in this football game of surprising Arizona. Then I think that one of the things Arizona is going to try to do is they're going to try and run the football. Seattle has to be able to shut that down and make Kyler Murray beat them through the air. If they cannot, they're really going to struggle.
Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Now make sure to make Locked On Bets your second listen, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. You can follow me on Twitter at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to check out Locked On Seahawks on Apple Podcasts, the Odyssey app, and Spotify. We're available 5 days a week for free on all major platforms. When we come back on Monday, we will officially be entering off-season mode. We will share our takeaways, as we always do, from Seattle's final game, whether it's a win or a loss in the desert. And then we'll slowly start transitioning into what could be a long, dark offseason. But we'll be glad to talk Seahawks with you all the way up to the beginning of next season. Enjoy the game. Enjoy your weekend. Go Hawks.